Chuck Smith of Calvary Chapel, shame on you. Chuck Smith, founder of the Calvary Chapel movement, is wrong about Revelation 13:7, which says the Antichrist will, quote, make war against the saints and will overcome them, and he will thereby gain power over every nation, unquote. Now, the word saints here means the holy people, which means the Christians in this case. But Chuck Smith, I heard it on the radio just a couple of weeks ago, claims it can't mean us Christians, quote, because we will already be raptured by that time, unquote. So it must mean the Jews over in Israel during the tribulation. Wrong. The reason number one is this: how can the Antichrist waging war against Israel, the Jews in Israel, account for these words at the end of verse 7 in Revelation 13? It says the Antichrist will gain power over every nation. How can a war against Israel give the Antichrist power over every nation? It doesn't make sense. The alternative explanation is that this war is against the leading Christian countries like America, and wiping out America or knocking off America would indeed, truly give Russia power over the whole world or every nation. Reason number two that Chuck Smith is wrong about Revelation 13:7 is this: the Antichrist making war against the saints can refer to war against the Christians, countries predominantly Christian. Why? Because if Russia bombs America, that would explain the rapture in a way that no one is expecting. For multiple millions of saved souls would depart this world together and be ushered into heaven. Now that sounds like the rapture to me. About 100 million Christians in America from our big cities would depart together. They would go from, quote, corruptible to incorruptible, unquote, bodies in, quote, an instant, the twinkling of an eye, unquote. This would fulfill Corinthians 15:50, verse 50 through 53. For the heat of the fireballs, nuclear fireballs, would turn their bodies of flesh to vapor instantly. I'm talking about Christians near ground zero. But for those further away, like 3 or 4 miles away, the heat would kill them but not vaporize them. So plenty of corpses would be left behind. Now this would fulfill Christ's words about the day of the Son of Man, which is synonymous with the rapture. He says, quote, where the bodies are, there will the vultures be gathered together, unquote. Luke 17, 29 through 37. So two groups of Christians are spoken of here. Now, the first group would be Christians whose physical bodies disappear, and the second group of Christians would be those who leave corpses behind. after their souls are raptured to heaven. My point here is that both aspects of the rapture will be fulfilled at the time of Russian attack upon an unsuspecting America which has foolishly disarmed due to Gorbachev's lie back in the late 1980s that Russia was becoming democratic and therefore no longer a threat, and therefore we could safely disarm. Now that lie fulfills, quote, the lying wonder, unquote, or wonderful lie, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, 9 through 11, that causes people to, quote, perish, unquote. Verse 10. How does this lie cause the perishing to take place? Well, the idea is we in the West believed that the Russian threat was gone or greatly reduced, so we disarmed, we went on a disarmament binge that lasted 30 years. Now, at last, we have finally disarmed. We have reduced our retaliatory arsenal so drastically that Russia is no longer afraid of our threat to retaliate after a Russian attack. So Russian attack must be acknowledged as a realistic possibility because of the great incentive that Russia has of gaining power over the whole world if America is removed, taken out of the way. Russia literally gains the whole world before China can become a full superpower, which is what worries Russia. Now, Russia's leaders are not morally equipped to resist the temptation of bombing America for the sake of the power over the world that they would gain. One more thing. The Antichrist is called, quote, the beast, unquote, in Revelation 13:7. Now that term means the fourth beast in Daniel 7, verse 7 through verse 8. But it also applies to the man who will lead the revival of that empire, which is, the revival is in verse 8, which is the Roman Empire. So when this man launches this war against Western Europe, fulfilling Daniel 7, verse 8, which says, one horn will come up among 10 horns. And this can be, this is talking about one nation coming up among 10 nations in terms of invading those 10 nations. And actually, Russia will invade many more than 10 nations in Western Europe. But the number is reduced down to 10, which is a subset for the sake of simplifying the situation, or the picture. Now, invading Europe, conquering Europe is what, and bombing America, is what makes this man, quote, the beast, unquote, of Revelation 13:7. For how does Russia conquering Europe equal the return of the Roman Empire? Well, the Roman Empire was characterized by one-man rule over Europe. In other words, each Caesar was one man that ruled all of the Roman Empire. One-man rule. And then when the Roman Empire fell, many different kings ruled different chunks, different parts of the Roman Empire. So one-man rule was replaced by the rule of many men many kings over sovereign nations. So when Russia conquers Europe and removes the kings or rulers of the different countries of Western Europe, and the leader of Russia, which is going to be Gorbachev, well actually it is Gorbachev behind the scenes right now, but it will be Gorbachev overtly after Russia conquers Europe, and that will restore one-man rule. So that'll be what the Bible means by the return of the Roman Empire. It's simply talking about the return of one man ruling all of the lands that used to be the Roman Empire. I'm saying Revelation 13:7 equals Daniel 7 verse 8. They're both talking about the restoration of the so-called restoration of the Roman Empire, and I have to resort to Revelation 13:7 because it explicitly says war, speaks of war, making war, whereas Daniel 7 verse 8 does not explicitly state war is going on. Now Chuck Smith and all the rest, they all misinterpret Daniel 7 verse 8. They say that's going to be fulfilled by the Antichrist coming through the EU, or what used to be called the common market. That's totally wrong. The common market is not the vehicle for the Antichrist to take over Western Europe and take over the whole world. These people are crazy. They're stupid. They're not stupid people. They're just stupid on this particular point. Why can't people see that Daniel 7 verse 8 and Revelation 13:7 are both talking about Russia conquering or invading and conquering Western Europe, and of course, by implication, bombing America? Russia wouldn't think about invading and conquering Europe without knocking off America through bombing our big cities and our military bases and the bases where our ICBMs are, which means intercontinental ballistic missile. For America is the defender of Europe due to our NATO obligations. So I say, shame on you, Chuck Smith, and who else? Jack Van Impe, Hal Lindsey, Grant Jeffries, Dave Hunt, Jonathan Kahn, Jack Hibbs, Don Stewart. I'm going to add a transcript in the description box under this video, and so please make a copy of the transcript, because the video itself will be destroyed when EMP occurs and computers are no longer will work. And so if you make a copy on paper, you'll have that as a resource. These same people that I mentioned already, they're also wrong about something else. They think the tribulation will be 7 years. That's totally wrong. First of all, the Bible says 3.5 years in Daniel 7 verse 25. And Christ comes and says, no, I will shorten the trip. So we can throw out the 3.5 years, and the 7 years is based on Daniel 9:27, totally misinterpreting that passage. Look up my video about Daniel 9:27. Another title is what does a confirmation? What covenant is meant by the words confirm the covenant in Daniel 9:27? They're also wrong about the context of the rapture and the size of the rapture, like I've tried to explain in this video. So thank you ever so much for taking the time for watching this video, and please consider my logic, and if you'll simply chew on it, this video will grow on you. My reasoning will grow on you. Did I already say 5 months for the trib? That's from Revelation 9, verse 5 and 10. It does fit the tribulation. The tribulation will be a time of Russian tanks occupying Western Europe. They won't be killing people. They'll mostly, they'll simply be occupying. Now, it does describe a time of occupation when it says people will seek death, but it will flee from them. So that means they won't. That's talking about a time of occupation. And another reason for the 5 months as the length of the trib is the first tribulation was 5 months, the siege of Jerusalem. Now that earlier trib is put side by side with the later trib in Matthew 24, verse 29. It says the tribulation of those days, which is talking about the Roman-Jewish War in 66 through 73, in particular the year 70. That's the siege year, the siege of Jerusalem. That trib is put side by side with the end time trib, which is where Christ talks about the stars falling. That's talking about man-made stars, nuclear bombs falling, Russia conquering, bombing America and conquering Europe. Okay, that's enough. I don't want to make this any longer than I already have.